Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to show my appreciation for Mary Hopkin, who was a famous Welsh singer who was signed to the Beatles' Apple label in the late 60s, had a lot of success, and both singles and albums. And I'm going to show you what I've got in my collection, which is not everything, but it's most of the Apple stuff. And then I'll just take you through what I've got, and then I'll give you my top 12 Mary Hopkin songs at the end. So starting off with my single collection, well, I haven't got a picture, I'm not sure if it came in a picture sleeve, but it's on the Apple label, Those Were the Days. Huge hit. So basically Mary was on a sort of talent spotting show called Opportunity Knocks, which is a UK show run by Hughie Green, and she was winning the heats quite comfortably, and the model Twiggy spotted her and phoned up Paul McCartney and said, "You should check this person out because she's very talented." So Paul gave her a ring, and you can imagine if she was in the hall of her home taking a phone call from Paul McCartney, and so she couldn't quite believe who she was speaking to, and he told her to come to London. In fact, they sent a car to get her to come to London, and they went into the studio, and Paul had recognised that Those Were the Days would be a good song for someone to cover. He actually recommended this to Denny Lane after he left the Moody Blues, but Denny didn't take him up on this, to his loss, and so Mary Hopkin was chosen for this song, and it was a very successful choice. And Paul not only got her to record it in English, she recorded, I think it was Italian version, Italian version, French version, and maybe a Spanish one. I'm not sure if it's a Spanish or German, the third one. But it was a big hit all around the world, and it's based on an old traditional folk tune from somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think. But copyright had run out, so they didn't have to pay anything. But anyway, huge #1 hit, replaced Hey Jude at the top of the charts, and on the Apple label, as I say. So then we had the follow-up, also produced by Paul McCartney, called Goodbye, which was credited to Lennon and McCartney, because at that stage McCartney was not ready to drop Lennon from the credits due to their joint arrangement that they had since they were kids. And but in reality, Paul wrote the song, and this was a very successful single. I think it got to #2. This is my copy of it, signed by George Martin on the back, who I met just near Soho Square in the late 80s, and he was just going into a restaurant and with his friends, and I went up to him, and he was a bit put out because he said, "Do you mind letting my friends go into the restaurant before I sign your autographs?" Because we were a bit over enthusiastic. But anyway, he was quite polite and he was quite nice. So that was George Martin, and that was Mary Hopkin, Goodbye. Great single. And then what else have I got next? Trying to go roughly in chronological order. Think About Your Children. This is in the stage of her career where Mickey Most had taken over from Paul McCartney in terms of giving her direction and asking her what to record, or suggesting what she record. And apparently she didn't really like this phase of her career, or a lot of it, because she was made out into be, so they magnified her image as a Welsh sort of young, innocent Welsh girl, and made her a bit of a goody-goody two-shoes in the eyes of the press. And this wasn't really all there was to Mary Hopkin, as she was at pains to point out in later interviews. But that was her image, and she was thrust onto TV shows. She was sent around the world and singing to the accompaniment of orchestras and stuff, and TV shows and everything, and had a lot of success, but didn't really like that side of show business. But the hits kept on coming. This is Tema Harbour, with a Welsh song on the backside, which I can't, B-side, which I can't really pronounce, I won't try and pronounce, but that's not a bad single, not my favourite. And then we've got, this is quite a rare Yugoslav Apple single, with the Yucatan label there, and it's Water, Paper and Clay from the Earth Song, Ocean Song album, so that was nice to have with Jefferson on the B-side. And then we've got Knock Knock Who's There, which is actually an earlier single from 1970. So this was I'm Gonna Fall in Love Again on the B-side. And this was the Eurovision Song Contest entry for Britain in 1970, and pre-tournament it was a heavy favourite, but unfortunately Mary only came second, and she didn't much like the song although I absolutely love it. It was very commercial, and it was released as a single and got all the way to number 2 in the charts, so the British public liked it. So that was my single collection, and then we've got my album collection. Well, this is the first album postcard, produced by Paul McCartney, with a nice postcard on the back where he's written the track listing, and an interesting selection of songs. Mary Hopkin, in a recent interview, or it's not that recent actually, probably mid-90s, early 90s, said it was okay for the time, but I can't relate to that album now. She didn't like some of the songs Paul had asked her to record, but she felt at such a young age she couldn't refuse. So she quite liked recording the Donovan songs. There's 3 Donovan songs on here: Lord of the Reedy River, Happiness Runs, and the third one, which I'm trying to find, Lullaby of the Voyage of the Moon, sorry. And Donovan was on hand to play guitar with Paul on the sessions, so that was good. Love is the Sweetest Thing, I think, is a nice little cover of the old standard. The Honeymoon Song, I think, is gorgeous. The Puppy Song, they'd written to Harry Nilsson and said we need a song, and he'd sent this song, which he had yet to release, which would later turn up on his Harry album. And then Inchworm, very successful ballad for me, and Young Love, Prince in Avignon, sung in French, very nice. And There's No Business Like Show Business at the end. And the good story about this album, although you can't see it because it's been signed in a pathetically light blue biro, but it says, "Very best wishes, Mary Hopkin." And the story of this is my friend Phil Chadder's grandfather, for some reason, was I think he was working for the post office, and the reception for Mary Hopkin's new album was at the post office tower. There used to be a restaurant at the top of the post office tower which would slowly revolve, showing you a great view of London. This was quite new, and it was like put up in 65, 66 kind of time. So by the time this would have been sort of February, March 69. A great place to hold a party, and he was there, so he got Mary to sign the album, and he later gave it to me, which was very nice of him. And apparently Paul McCartney was at the press conference, and Jimi Hendrix turned up, so it must have been quite a party to be at. Nice one. So that was my UK copy signed. This is another UK copy I have. They're both on the Apple label. You can tell the British apple because it's a bit darker than the American apple. And this is in pretty good condition. I picked these up in the 80s. I can't remember how much I paid for them, but it wasn't too extravagant. And then moving on to her second album, which didn't come out until after all those singles I showed you, or most of the singles, Earth Song, Ocean Song. And this was more in tune with what Mary Hopkin wanted to record. You know, she was more of a folk music fan than a kind of singer of standards, and she could basically do what she wanted on this album, and she worked very closely with her, I think it was her fiance at the time, Tony Visconti, who she married in 71, or maybe they were married just before this album came out, but he's on hand to do the string arrangements, and we've got Ralph McTell, the songwriter, is on hand with the 6 and 12 string guitar duties, along with Dave Cousins on guitar and banjo, Danny Thompson on bass. And this is an interesting album because it's got sort of variety of songwriters that she turns to, such as Gallagher and Lyle, Harvey Andrews, Ralph McTell, Tom Paxton, Cat Stevens, and Liz Thorson. And very nice sleeve. I like the gatefold with the colour picture. The photography is by Ethan Russell, who had done the photography for Let It Be, if you remember. So it's a small world in the world of Apple. So moving through chronologically, we have this superb compilation album, which I don't think has been re-released since. Might be wrong, but this is 1972, collecting all of her singles, and some of them were not even released in England, like Que Sera Sera. Mary Hopkin refused to release it in England, so it was only released in France, I think. And some of these are B-sides, such as Kew Gardens, Heritage, Sparrow is another B-side. But this is a very nice compilation, and it's, unlike my other albums, this is a US copy, as you can tell, with the slightly lighter apple there. I'm not sure if it's Winchester or Jacksonville or what, but it's in pretty good nick. And the good thing about when the CDs came out, you got bonus tracks. Not that one really needs 3 versions of Those Were the Days like you get on this CD. I think it's the Spanish one and the Italian one. And Turn, Turn, Turn is on here as a bonus track, the B-side of Those Were the Days. And this album actually doesn't have any bonus tracks at all, but if you go on Spotify, there's an expanded version of Earth Song with quite a few bonus tracks, including Kew Gardens and a couple of B-sides. And this Greatest Hits, or Those Were the Days album, is quite a bit expanded. It's got several tracks which weren't on the vinyl I just showed you, such as Streets of London, Silver Birch and Weeping Willow, Water, Paper and Clay, Kew Gardens, Jefferson. So that's nice to have. And then the final Mary Hopkin related item in my collection, I really want to draw your attention to this because this is superb. This is an album which came out in 1984, embossed title of the band there, Oasis, which would obviously later become the well-known Gallagher Brother band. But at the time, in 84, this was a unique name. So if you go and search for Oasis now on the internet, you won't get, this album probably won't come up unless you type 1984, in which case it will come up. Well worth checking out. This is the back cover. So Peter Skellen, he's writing most of the songs, and he shares the vocal duties with Mary Hopkin. We've got Julian Lloyd Webber, Andrew Lloyd Webber's brother, on the cello, and we've got Mitch Dalton here and Bill Lovelady here on guitar duties. And it's a very mellow album, and I thoroughly recommend it. This is the inner sleeve with the pictures of the band. They only stayed together a short while. They were going to go on a short tour, and then Mary got ill, so they disbanded. They cancelled the tour and they disbanded. But I would thoroughly recommend this album, particularly the track I Wonder Why, which is just an absolutely sublime ballad with 3-part harmonies to die for. So what else can we tell you about Mary Hopkin? Well, she was married to Tony Visconti for 10 years, and during that time she contributed famously some backing vocals to David Bowie's song Sound and Vision, and she's credited on the sleeve as Mary Visconti, her married name. As I say, she'd borrowed songs. She didn't write her own songs really, so she borrowed material from a whole range of songwriters quite sensibly. Gallagher and Lyle, a big favourite of mine, they also wrote Breakaway which Art Garfunkel covered in 75. So as I mentioned, she wasn't too keen on the sort of the Eurovision years, or whatever you want to call them, the commercial years when she was being sold as some kind of pop star. She didn't really like that, but there is an interesting concert which she did in 72 on Spotify. I think it was in England somewhere, and Tony Visconti is singing harmony vocal with her on a charming duet of If I Fell, which is well worth checking out. There's also a live concert from Osaka in Japan, 1970, with a pretty hilarious interview with a Japanese folk singer. And in that concert she does the Puppy song, In My Life and Yesterday, Beatles covers, which is quite interesting. And so now I'm going to take you, and this is my top 12. Well, I'll just read them out to you quickly. Number 12, I'm going to go with the track from the first album, Postcard, Young Love, which I think has great funky guitar. I know she wasn't very keen on this song, but I think I've always loved it. It's always been a standout of the album for me. Think About Your Children, the single, it was a hit. That's number 11 for me. Inchworm, which Paul, actually, I think I'm right in saying he covered it on Kisses on the Bottom album not so long ago. But I think it's a charming song. The Puppy song, again, as I mentioned, Harry Nilsson original, which had yet to see the light of day, so Mary had first use of that song. Prince on Avenue is number 8, so that Puppy song was number 9, Inchworm number 10. And number 7, we got International, which is a great Gallagher and Lyle original. I like their version as well. You can hear their version. I can't remember which album it's on, or whether it's McGuinness Flint, or I'm not sure. But there is a version out there where you can hear which is not Mary singing, obviously. And then Knock Knock Who's There, I've got number 6. Yes, it's commercial, but it's in the great Eurovision sort of tradition. It's a great commercial pop hit single, and it should have won, in my opinion. But it didn't. So but it did get to number 2 in the charts. Number 5, we got the Ralph McTell cover from Earth Song, Ocean Song, Streets of London, and then the superb The Fields of Saint Etienne, which was only relegated to a B-side back in the day. And I love the harmony vocal with the guy coming in singing harmony in the last verse. I can't remember his name, sorry. Number 3, I've chosen Goodbye, the Lennon-McCartney song, which she had a hit with in early '69. About a month after the Get Back sessions, I seem to remember. Then number 2, we've got the Honeymoon song, which was a favourite of Paul's, so he chose that song for her. And if you remember, the Beatles had covered it for the BBC, and it's on the live BBC album, the volume 1 of that. Great favourite of mine, the Honeymoon songs. Mary sings it really well. And number 1, I know it may be a bit obvious to some, but I absolutely love her version of Que Sera Sera. Whatever will be, the future's not ours to see. Que Sera Sera. And she sings it absolutely charmingly. She's just got a great voice, and such a great tune anyway, and great musicianship, and Paul McCartney is on hand to produce that particular track as well, although, as I say, not released in the UK as a single. So this was my top 12, Mary Hopkin. So check her out. Not all of her stuff is on Spotify. You won't find Knock Knock Who's There, for example, on Spotify. You won't even find Think About Your Children, I don't think. But or if you want to search out, the CDs are not that easy to find these days, nor are the vinyl, I would dare to say. But you could probably get them on YouTube if worse comes to worse. So that was Mary Hopkin. Thank you for watching. See you next time.